In 1959, Henry Murray believed he could measure the human mind under pressure. He believed it the way other men believe in gravity. By the time he was done, one of his subjects would build bombs for 17 years and kill 3 people. This is Henry Murray, Harvard psychologist, former OSS interrogator, a man who genuinely believed that if you took a young mind and put it under enough stress in a quiet room, you could learn something useful about the human condition. He was about to discover something far more disturbing. And the boy sitting across from him, codenamed Lawful, was 17 years old, brilliant, isolated, and writing the first pages of what would one day become a manifesto. Murray did not know this yet. Murray was about to teach him how. Henry Murray was not a cruel man. That is the part history struggles with. He was, by every academic measure, brilliant. He had reshaped American personality theory. He had served his country in the Office of Strategic Services during the Second World War, designing assessment protocols for spies. He had spent his career trying to understand why men obeyed, why men resisted, why some men broke. By 1959, he was 66 years old, tenured at Harvard, and convinced that psychology had been too gentle with itself. Real data, he believed, came from real pressure. To understand a man, you had to push him to the edge of his own beliefs and watch what stayed standing. So he designed a study. He would recruit undergraduates. He would ask them to write a personal philosophy, their deepest values, their core convictions, the things they would defend to anyone. Then he would have them debate it on camera with a stranger, a friendly intellectual exchange. That was the pitch. That was what the boys were told. That was not what Murray had built. But here's the thing. The stranger was not a stranger. He was a hand-picked law student, briefed in advance, given the boys' entire written philosophy, and instructed to attack it, not to debate it, to dismantle it, to ridicule the boys' beliefs, to mock his reasoning, to insult his character, to push until something cracked. The sessions were recorded, lights were aimed at the subject's face, electrodes monitored his heart rate and his skin response, and Murray and his assistants watched from behind a one-way mirror, taking notes. When the session ended, the boy was not released. He was brought back days later to watch himself. He sat in a chair and watched the footage of his own face flushing, his voice rising, his arguments collapsing. He watched himself fail to defend the things he had said he believed. Then he was asked to explain what he saw. Then it was done again. And again, 22 undergraduates went through this procedure between 1959 and 1962. Some of them lasted weeks. Others were brought back month after month for up to 3 years. The study was funded in part by interests connected to the same Cold War intelligence apparatus that produced MK-Ultra, the CIA's mind control program of the same decade. Murray himself never publicly acknowledged the connection, but the design was identical in spirit. He was not measuring personality. He was measuring how a young man broke, and one of those young men was Theodore Kaczynski. Kaczynski was 16 years old when he arrived at Harvard. He had skipped 2 grades. He was a mathematics prodigy from a working-class Chicago suburb, and he had never been away from home. He was small for his age, socially withdrawn, and entirely unprepared for an Ivy League social world. He had no friends. He ate alone. He was assigned the codename Lawful. He was assigned to Henry Murray. What Kaczynski did not know was that the experiment had no protective debrief. There was no counselor afterward. There was no therapist on call. There was no acknowledgement ever that what had happened in that room was anything other than research. The boys were told it was a study of stress. They were not told that the goal was psychological breakage. They were not told that the entire structure was modeled on the interrogation techniques Murray had refined during the war for breaking foreign agents. Kaczynski went through the procedure for 3 years, 200 hours of recorded humiliation, 200 hours of being told that everything he believed was stupid, naive, indefensible. The transcripts that survive describe him as initially confident, then frustrated, then guarded, then quiet. Notes from the research team describe him in later sessions as withdrawn to the point of being non-responsive. He stopped defending his ideas. He stopped engaging with the interrogator at all. He sat there and absorbed it. According to one summary written by a research assistant, his pulse during the final sessions was nearly flat. He was not afraid anymore. He was not angry. He was somewhere else. Whatever protective layer a 16-year-old uses to organize the world around him had been stripped slowly over 36 months and replaced with something colder. The researchers wrote down what they saw. They did not stop. There was no point in the experiment. in 3 years of recorded sessions at which any member of Murray's team intervened. There was no point at which anyone asked whether this was helping the subject or harming him. There was no point at which Murray himself sat across from the boy and said, "You can leave." The data was the point, the boy was the instrument, and the instrument was beginning to deform. Kaczynski graduated from Harvard in 1962. He was 20 years old. He earned a doctorate in mathematics from Michigan, became one of the youngest assistant professors ever appointed at Berkeley, and then, in 1969, walked away from academia entirely. He moved into a one-room cabin in Montana with no running water and no electricity. He lived there alone for 25 years. In 1978, he mailed his first bomb. Over the next 17 years, he would send 16 more, killing 3 people and injuring 23. In 1995, he published a 35,000-word manifesto attacking industrial society and the systematic psychological manipulation of human beings by technological systems. The manifesto contains, almost verbatim, the language of a man who had spent 3 years being told that his beliefs did not matter, in a room designed to prove it. After his arrest in 1996, Kaczynski refused for years to speak about Henry Murray. When he finally did, he was asked whether the Harvard experiment had contributed to what he had become. He said it had not made him a bomber. He said it had taught him something else. It had taught him, he said, that men with credentials and clipboards could destroy a person and call it science. And that was the moment Murray had been wrong about everything. Henry Murray died in 1988. He never publicly addressed his role in the experiment. He never apologized to any of the 22 subjects. The recordings remain sealed at Harvard. The names of the other 21 boys have never been released. We do not know what happened to them. We know only that they were 17, 18, 19 years old when it began, and that some of them, by the accounts of researchers who later reviewed the files, appeared to suffer lasting psychological consequences. Murray's defenders point out that the experiment was approved by Harvard, that informed consent as we now understand it did not exist in 1959, that his intentions, while flawed, were academic. None of this is incorrect. None of it is the point. The point is that a man with a clipboard, a federal grant, and a quiet room can do enormous damage to another human being, and the damage may not appear for years, and when it does, it may not look like damage at all. It may look like a 35,000-word manifesto. It may look like 17 years of bombs. It may look like a boy who once believed in something and was taught in 200 hours of recorded sessions that no one in the world would ever listen to what he believed. The instrument deformed. The data is still classified. The verdict belongs to history.